Ekabo, and welcome to our Friday's History Live at the Ile Ijuba Ode Otun. All right, before I begin today's live, I would like to open with the Iba. Opwe ni fun oloru, Oludumare Oba Jiki, Mojiloni, Mowogun Meriaye, Iba Ila Orun, Iba Iwo Orun, Iba Ariwa, Iba Gusu, Iba Oba Igba Aye, Iba Orun, okay, Iba Baba, Iba Yeye, Iba Atiwo Orun, Iba She Igungun Kiki Igungun, Iba She Ori Inu, Ipori Atiwo Orun, Ashe, Ashe, Ashe. All right, before I do the history reading for this week, I want to introduce a very important subject, two important subjects. One of them is called autonomy, and the other one is in reference to what is known as Stockholm Syndrome. Now, for the members of our community, these are two very important concepts, and I want to take the time off to look at the etymology and to discuss what these things mean so that we could understand the true significance of autonomy. And we also would be looking at Stockholm Syndrome, which will identify some of the challenges we have as a community in addressing what is necessary for our collective progress. All right, now, as always, you would hear me talk about etymology and the importance of understanding or comprehending how specific words are used. What I always encourage is that persons try to get themselves an etymology dictionary, and if you cannot afford or if one is not accessible, what you try to do is you try to get a very old English dictionary that has good, clear definitions and that gives you some ideas as to the origins of the words that are in the dictionary. All right, so tonight I'm going to use two main dictionaries. The main one is the Webster Universal Dictionary of the English Language from 1934, and I'm also going to use an etymology dictionary to give us a clear and an in-depth look at both the words autonomy, and we're going to look at the concept of the Stockholm Syndrome and what it is. All right, so I'm going to start first with the concept of autonomy. According to the Webster Universal Dictionary of the English Language from 1936, these are the three definitions of the word autonomy. Autonomy is the power or right of self-government, whether in a community which elects its own magistrates and makes its own laws, or in an individual who lives according to his own will. The second definition, in the philosophy of Kant, the right of reason to dominate in matters of ethics. the right of the individual to govern himself according to his own reason. And the third definition from the Webster Universal Dictionary of English is, in biology, an autonomous organism. So let's look now at the origin of the word autonomy. Now, autonomy came from the Greek autonomia, all right, and from the French, the first part of the word autonomy is auto, which is from French, which is autos, A-U-T-O-S, which means the self. And the last part of the word nomi comes from the word nomia, which means arrangement or management. All right, it also appears as the word nomos, which means law, and nemein, which means to distribute. So from autos, we get the idea of self, and from nomi, we get the idea of management or arrangement or laws, which sort of governs what a person does. So from the word autonomos, which is autonomy, the implication is having self-law. And from the word law, we have the word govern or government, which grammatically is also referred to as regimen. But generally, when you hear the word govern, we're talking about to rule with authority, to direct, to regulate, and to sway. All right? The word government comes from the old French word gouverner, which means to steer, to direct, or to rule. So on the whole, the concept of autonomy deals with the whole idea of a person or a collective group having the wherewithal and the ability to make decisions based on their reasoning for their best interests. So being an autonomous being would mean you are an individual who has the ability to self-manage. Now, why? Why autonomy? Now, for us as a community, autonomy will ensure that our future is directed in a logical way that will ensure our survival and the comfort of our future generations. All right, so that in a nutshell is autonomy and how we as a community should view the very idea or concept of autonomy. So the second thing we're going to look at is something that is referred to as Stockholm Syndrome. All right, and it is a psychological problem that is caused by certain conditions. So the first thing one would ask is who, where, or what is Stockholm? Now, the Stockholm Syndrome is a term that was coined, and it was coined based on a specific thing that occurred in history. All right? There was a bank robbery in 1973 in Stockholm, Sweden. Employees were kept for 6 days in the bank vault, and they were wrapped in explosives during the 6 days by their captors. The victims bonded with their captives to the extent where they protected them from the police. And even after they were released, they kept contact with the robbers. And they even refused to testify against them in court. All right? Concealing the accounts or the details of the accounts of what actually occurred. So let's now try to unwrap this story and understand what this bank robbery has to do with what is referred to as the Stockholm Syndrome. Because of what the victims experienced, the resulting response that they gave were because of the trauma that was caused during the robbery and during the time that they were kept as captives. Now, there are specific markers of the trauma in the way that it affected the victims. Now, what happened is because of the threats of bodily harm, physical harm, or even psychological harm, the indirect threat of loss or of something